Welcome to Clean Hits Hockey! Sorry, Brad's not here, so I decided to just steal from Austin over at SLC Puck. Isn't that how we're supposed to open our Utah hockey podcasts? Sorry about that, Austin. A little bit of plagiarism to kick us off here at the top. No. We are the inmates running the asylum today. The adult in the room, Brad, has left us for the afternoon, and he's entrusting Cory and I to do our best at the helm here for Clean Hits Hockey. So we're hitting you late on a Friday, like a couple of procrastinating slackers with our podcast for the week. I'm joined, as always, by Clean Hits Cory. How's it going, Cory?
It's good. The team is on a 1-game winning streak, hoping to make it 2 this weekend against Vegas, and it's Friday, right? So everything's good.
That's it. And I'm Trent, the host who forgot to introduce himself off the top. We are Clean Hits Hockey. Make sure you check us out at cleanhits.com, where you're going to find all of our written content. Cory released his profile of Alex Kerfoot earlier today. So don't miss that. I had my CHL portion of my Prospect Primer series drop earlier this week. AHL last week. Next week, keep an eye out for the NCAA portion of that. Some of our content is premium for paid subscribers. If you haven't checked us out, check us out for free. If you do have a free subscription, definitely consider upgrading and unlocking all of our premium content. Also, check us out on X or Twitter at Clean Hits Hockey. Our link tree is in our Twitter bio, or X if you prefer. And there you can find the link to our free and easy to join Discord, which is the positive community where we share our ideas and have civil discussion and a lot of fun conversation. And it's a great place to escape the cesspool that is social media, especially Twitter, especially in November. Flee, run for the hills, come to swim the clean, clear, cool waters of the Clean Hits Discord and get out of the swamp that is X. Do yourself a favor, join up today. Of course, we do appreciate any subscribe, and comment on YouTube as well. Those are huge for us. We're at Clean Hits Hockey on YouTube, and we're also on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So that is about as clean of a job as I can do with the self-promotion. That's definitely Brad's wheelhouse. I'm sick of talking already. I don't know how he does this, but I think that Cory, now that the dust is cleared on your trip to SLC, now that we can no longer blame you for the losing streak, now that we have that 1-game winning streak, as you mentioned, I think now finally it's appropriate to turn the floor over to you and talk a little bit about your trip to Salt Lake City and tell us what it was like through the wide eyes of a visiting Canadian. How did it go?
Yeah, so back in Toronto here for about a week or so now, and good to be off the hook for the losing streak. Was definitely not in attendance for the nightmare game against San Jose, but just a really positive experience in Utah. I mean, obviously the 2 games didn't go very well on the score sheet, getting shut out by Ottawa, and that was really a frustrating game because they played, aside from a 10-minute lapse in the first period, 50 minutes, they were by far the better team. I think they outshot the Senators by a pretty close to a 2-1 margin, and then the Colorado game was probably, aside from maybe the San Jose collapse, probably the worst game of the year. Just particularly nobody looked good in that game. But, beyond the score sheet, I think the highlight was just meeting all the different people from our Clean Hits community at the game, starting with getting to meet Cole Bagley face to face. I know we've had him on the show a couple of times, but always good to meet people face to face and just seeing Cole in person. And he's been a great reporter for the team there and the content that he's putting out, and obviously a great guest on our show here as well. But then beyond that, just meeting some of the members of the Clean Hits community, standing in line at the team store and meeting 3-Putt from our Discord. I believe his name is Dave, and him, lifting his shirt and showing the Clean Hits t-shirt underneath, and just a little bit surreal to see another Clean Hits shirt out in the wild. I mean, I had my own on, but to see somebody else's was a little crazy.
So were you a little nervous when the shirt started coming up?
Yeah, who knows what's going to be under there, right? Yeah.
And then of all things, it was probably the best case scenario in that situation of
Yeah,
a random man in a store lifting his shirt to you. And what are you going to find? Lo and behold, the logo of your podcast.
exactly. Yeah, no, that doesn't happen
Terrible
too
turn.
often.
Yeah.
But then, yeah, even at like the intermissions, meeting SLC Puck Austin and Rod Anderson, who I think have been part of the Clean Hits following since day one.
That's it.
Meeting people like Brian, who you'll see him on Twitter as at UT Yeti. Also, I think a supporter of this team since day one, and really holding on to that Yeti handle just in case the opportunity comes up where the team takes the Yeti name. And I know he's been pretty open about if the team wants his handle, it's very much available. And he had a cool story too because he's relatively new to Utah. Grew up in Long Island as an Islanders fan, but as soon as this team was announced, that was kind of it for the Islanders fandom. And, it's Utah, potentially Yeti fan from day one. Met another fan named, I believe his name was Bryce, and he is a Utah, born and raised native, longtime New Jersey Devils fan. And, how could you not be with some of the teams they had back in the day with Niedermeyer and Stevens and Brodeur and 3 cups, I believe, maybe 4. But again, as soon as the Utah team was announced, it was the Devil stuff gets, packed away in the closet, and it's time to get the Yeti gear out. Who else did I bump into down there? I met Preston was the first one I believe I met. I believe that's it. Yeah. So 7 or 8 different faces. And then just the game experience. I mean, again, not as exciting because of the losses and only 1 goal in the 2 games, but just really cool to see the atmosphere there. I think some of the commentary around the seating and things like that is a little bit overblown. I mean, especially coming from Mullet, right? When you had 4,500 seats to now we have triple that. A little, I mean, concerning is not the right word for the game against Colorado, but there was an overwhelming number of Avalanche fans there. So to the season ticket holders, if you're going to sell your tickets, don't sell them to that game because we need to fill the barn with our own fans. I think we're going to see a potential Utah-Colorado playoff series in the future, right? Just being in the same division, there's a good chance of that. So I think that's probably a really budding rivalry. Fan base is kind of already going at it. Already looking forward to the next game against Colorado because I don't think we came out very well in that game. So would like some revenge in the next one for sure. But yeah, just the Utah experience itself, very positive. Already looking forward to going back. There's so many things to do there, right? So many outdoor experiences and hiking. It's just hard to keep track of all the different parks and sightseeing and things like that. Had an opportunity to go and see Delicate Arch. That's definitely a hike up there. I did beat the time on the sign said 2 to 3 hours, and I was able to get up and down in about an hour. So I was, pat on my back for that. And then shout out to Crown Burger as well. Sponsorship opportunities still very much available. And I guess that is a Salt Lake City secret is you can take a burger and you can put pastrami on it, and somehow it works. I've looked, there's nothing like that here in Toronto. So might just need a trip back to SLC just for that.
It makes sense, right? It's beef on beef. You
Mm-hmm.
can do that. You can do that. I get a little weirded out when you're mixing the meats too much. I guess bacon is a little different. Pig and beef, I can get over that. But yeah, pastrami on burger sounds good to me, man.
It's the Bill Armstrong philosophy of just stack one good thing on top of another good thing, and it just seems to work.
That's it. You're rebuilding one burger at a time.
Exactly.
Much the same way as Maverick Lamrou's weight gain plan was all cheeseburger based, like Wimpy from Popeye. That's how he was going to pack on the pounds. That's a story for another time, I think. But yeah, it's great to hear that things went so well in Utah, that you got to meet so many awesome people that we know from online and through the, just blogging and podcasting and running the Discord community. Kind of seeing people in person is really awesome. I'm planning myself to head down to SLC over spring break. I'm going to bring the family. I've got a 4th grader, and in the US, when you're in 4th grade, you get a free pass to all the national parks. It's like the national parks year of elementary school, Cory. So my 4th grader is doing national parks stuff in school. He's reading national parks books. He's really excited. So we're going to go to the Grand Canyon on the way up. We're going to go to Zion or Bryce Canyon as well. We're going to hit the Antelope Island. We're going to hit, of course, Utah HC game. Hopefully the Ducks game there in April, so that I can really give it to Radko Gudas live and in person. Then we're going to hit Zion. I'm sorry. We're going to hit, some the arches on the way out. Maybe Monument Valley. We're not sure about the second leg yet, but we're going to do a big long road trip as a family with my wife and my two young kids. So hoping to have a similar experience to you, maybe a little bit more profitable in the win column at least, but in terms of just having a quintessential Utah experience and a great family road trip across the American West, I'm super excited about it. So we're really looking forward to it as a group. My little kids are already all excited about it. And they're like, when is spring break, by the way? And I'm like, yeah, it's like 4 or 5 months from now or whatever. And they're like, oh, to them, that's forever. They're like, why are we even talking about it then, old man? You've ruined my day. So anyway, so there's some other newcomers to Utah. Someone else has made his first trip out, and that is the newest member of the Utah Hockey Club, Oli Määttä, who made his debut this week in the first win. Utah, of course, acquired him from the Detroit Red Wings as the Iser plan continues to mystify people, I think, a little bit more and more. We acquired him for a third-round pick, which was actually the New York Rangers' third-round pick that we acquired previously for retaining some salary on Patrick Kane. So thanks for that, Alex Morello. Glad you picked up the tab, and now Ryan Smith gets to enjoy adding an Oli Määttä for effectively a free pick. He jumped right into the lineup, shockingly, having been traded in the middle of the night, almost at 9:00 Detroit time when he got traded.
Yeah.
And he was on a plane the next day. He was in the lineup, and not only that, but he played over 20 minutes.
Season high
a guy
for him.
Season high. A guy who's been playing on the third pair or as a reserve D in Detroit. He gets to hop over the boards a whole heck of a lot of times and take 20 plus minutes worth of shifts. He was great, man. He was good in his corner, really good at breaking the puck out. There were a couple of sequences on Utah goals and good scoring chances that really started all with him going into his corner, gaining possession of the puck, getting that outlet up the ice into the neutral zone with speed, and starting a breakout, which is something the team had struggled mightily with since Sean Durzi went down, having effectively really just one guy who's really good at moving the puck, which is Mikhail Sergachev, and a whole lot of guys who either have traditionally struggled with that or have usually been pretty decent at it. And for whatever reason this season are struggling with it. Somebody like Juuso Välimäki, who's had all kind of troubles with it this year, kind of almost has the yips when it comes to breaking that puck out. And then there's other guys like Ian Cole, who it's really never been a specialty of theirs. So I think adding that element is super important for the team. I know you guys talked a little bit about Määttä on the post-game show, but I'm wondering now that we've had a little time to digest the move, what some of your thoughts are on it.
I think, it's been described as a stopgap, but I think he's probably just maybe a half a point more than a stopgap. He's only going to be here to the end of the year, and I don't think he's going to be resigned, just given some of the up-and-comers we have on the blue line. But in terms of his first game, 20 minutes, gets thrown right into the fire, has just a wild 24 hours between getting traded late at night, gets on the plane from Detroit, gets into Utah, and, don't even really have time to think, just go and play. And I think Oli Määttä played a very Oli Määttä game, right? Just simple puck movements. Like you said, beyond Sergachev, a lot of our other defensemen are not really capable of moving the puck or just have really been struggling. And even Sergachev, he's not your traditional power play quarterback like a Sean Durzi would be. And not saying that Oli Määttä is, but just a very, simple, straightforward game from him. Was able to, calm down the defense, stabilize the defense. I think he played with a couple different partners that night because we were running 7 defensemen, and he was on the ice for Maverick Lamoureux's first ever goal too, which was really cool to see.
I love those two together, man. And the nice thing about Oli Määttä is, he's not that old. He's only 30. But it feels like he's been in the league a long time because he's been through it all. He was this A+ blue chip prize prospect coming out of London, who back in those days, everybody jokingly called the 31st NHL team because it basically ran like a mini NHL team in that 10,000 seat arena that's sold out all the time and has all the crazy production value and pro kind of pampering. And it's really an NHL type experience. And he was a standout player for them He gets drafted by the Pittsburgh Penguins, comes into the league, has an outstanding rookie season, and then unfortunately gets diagnosed with thyroid cancer. Really a big setback in his young career, has to have surgery, miss a extended period of time. He manages only to play 20 or so games in his follow-up season as a sophomore. He had a pretty gruesome injury at one point where he got smashed into the open gate, I think, on the bench. Had a tear, an abdominal tear, and had to have core surgery that limited him. He bounced around a bit after Pittsburgh, but not before he won 2 Stanley Cups there, playing in a career of 85 playoff games, including some with Chicago, I think, in what was probably the last time they were in the playoffs. Määttä was there. Then he had, a couple more forgettable stints in LA and Detroit. But the point is, he's only 30, but he's really been through all of it. He's been through the ringer. He's been through the roller coaster, ups and downs. And I'll tell you, there's no chance that his first game in Utah was the first time in his career he was part of a team in desperate need to snap a losing streak and right the ship. And it's not the first time he's been a steady, calming veteran presence in a situation like that. So with a leadership group that's kind of in some uncharted waters as a young leadership group, it's great to have even more Stanley Cup playoff, even more championship, even more big moment experience from a grizzled veteran, a journeyman at this point in Oli Määttä. I think just another guy added to the mix with all of those additions Bill Armstrong brought in this offseason to add that kind of experience to bolster this young team.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because he doesn't have the offensive touch he did, way back when with the Penguins. He's more of a stay-at-home at this time of his career, and it's funny because all this time we were thinking about how can we replace Sean Durzi, but we might have just brought in a John Marino replacement. I mean, obviously they're not on the same level anymore, but certainly helps. And I think the search is definitely continuing for one other defenseman because it is a little bit precarious. Robert Bertuzzo is not playing a ton of minutes. He seems to go down every game with what looks to be an injury, but then he's able to pop back up. Vladislav Kolyachonok is not playing a ton. And the other thing, too, is just the nature of defense. There's going to be another injury here at some point, and there's still not a lot to call up in Tucson. So I do think the search is continuing, and maybe that's just a natural segue to the future, what the future holds for Michael Carcone.
True. Great point. Oli Määttä has been a great addition. He's not enough. Those key absences are going to be on the IR for a long time. And even when they come back in this spring, they're not going to come back at 100%. They're going to be rusty as all get out, right? They can kind of, Durzi at least can keep his legs fresh a little bit. I'm not sure what you can do to stay in shape and ready with a low back surgery like what Marino has. I mean, Durzi with the shoulder, he can skate, he can get on the bike, he can keep himself in shape, but I don't know if by the time Marino's 100%, might be not until the time Durzi's 100%. So if this is all really held together at this point by band-aids, bubble gum, and baling wire, it's a bit of a house of cards even when it's working. And one more bad break, we're going to be right back to square onesville, where we were prior to the Määttä trade. So I think you're totally right, Cory. I still think this is something that's going to be addressed. Kenny's releasing a piece, I think later today on the blog, profiling some different trade options. And in his theory that he expressed in the post game and that he's going to reiterate in that blog piece is that he believes another move is going to come before the holiday roster freeze just ahead of Christmas and New Year. I'm not sure if it'll be that soon, but I don't see why not, really, if the market presents itself. And we are starting to get some whispers, like you alluded to, that there's at least one member of the Utah Hockey Club that might not be totally averse to the idea of finding a new place to play. And that's Michael Carcone, right? We had Elliot Friedman release in his written version of the 32 Thoughts podcast, his 32 Thoughts blog. He said that Carcone hasn't played since October 16th, and his direct quote was, "And that one's growing some urgency to it," meaning that's a situation that needs to get resolved and probably can't keep up as is without some friction developing, if the friction hasn't already developed. Friedman further on his audio podcast kind of connected some dots, saying that he thought Colorado might be a decent fit. They're, of course, dealing with some injuries and some lack of depth. But a further bit of fuel to this fire come from the Carcone household itself. His wife could have been talking about literally anything, but I think there's a good chance she was referring to his professional life when she posted a picture of him on Instagram, being thankful to have a husband who still shows up for his family, even on his toughest of days, she says, and better things coming up for you, to him. So sounds like he's going through a tough time, and she's giving him some encouragement and expressing some gratitude for his ability to still be a very good presence in their life and be a good family man, which is great to hear. But it is speculation that what she's alluding to has to do with his professional life. But I think there's a decent chance that it does, given everything else we're hearing and the fact that he hasn't played in a couple of weeks, right, Cory?
Mm-hmm. 6 straight scratches.
Yeah. Tough for a guy who scratched and clawed his way all the way up from the minor leagues, went undrafted, changed organizations several times. Finally, in his last season in Tucson, he put up 85 points, really forced the team's hand.
Led the HL.
Made some really good had some really good moments, really good games in his call-ups. Really was a great feel-good story. And then finally last season, he got hot a couple of different times. Things were really going his way. His shooting percentage was off the charts, and he ended up potting 21 goals in the NHL. And that 20-goal mark is really a big threshold in this league. Once you can establish yourself as a 20-goal scorer, what this really means is that you're a guy teams are going to be interested in. You should have a future in the league. You're a 20-goal scorer in the NHL. That should open up opportunities for you and keep opportunities open for you a little bit longer. Michael Carcone, however, now finds himself scratched in 6 straight games. So this is a guy who probably felt that his NHL dream had finally come true, that his next contract was going to be a life-changing contract, and that he was going to be a big part of the future here in Utah, or at least somewhere in the league. And it's now looking a little bit less likely given some of the winger depth that we have. So much so that NHL insider Elliotte Friedman has caught wind of this and is speculating that Carcone could be on the move. But my question for you, Cory, is not necessarily whether he'll be traded. I think he probably will. But what could he realistically bring? We have a lot of problems on the blue line. Is he going to be traded for blue line help? Is he going to be traded for futures? What do you see happening once a trade does materialize? What is the type of trade you expect to see for Michael Carcone?
Well, I think there's a lot of positives when it comes to Michael Carcone. Like you said, 21 goals last year, which is nothing to sneeze at. But at the same time, he makes $775,000, which is the league minimum. And he's a pending unrestricted free agent. So there's really not a lot of commitment here. And with that salary number as well, if things do go south, you can easily tuck him away in the minors where that cap hit would no longer count against the cap. So lots of reasons to buy. But I can also understand a bit of, skepticism from rival GMs where that 21 goal season was, very high shooting percentage for part of it, very much goals in bunches. And at the same time, it was kind of a one-off, right? He's never done anything like that before. And, the betting favorite would be that he's probably not going to get 20 something goals again this year. Even like 15 would be tough. And I mean, also kind of, not a great story for him when the team's coming off of a couple of games where they had, I think it was 3 goals in 3 games, and he didn't get into the lineup. He didn't get into the lineup over Liam O'Brien, and he didn't get into the lineup the other night in favor of a 7th defenseman. So a bit of an indictment on where he stands with the organization. But, in terms of value, I think just because the cap hit is so low and there's some teams that are really desperate for some offense right now. Colorado, I think, has 5 or 6 of their top 9 forwards who are out. And then a team like the New York Islanders, who they just can't score. They have, I think it's 22 goals in 10 games, so 2.2 a game. And if you take away the 4 or 5 it was against Utah, then it's even worse. It's like 17 goals in in 9 games. This is not what they were envisioning when they brought in Patrick Waugh. It was kind of a beginning of a change of identity for the Islanders, where they would be kind of getting away from the Lou Lamoriello trying to recreate the early 2000 Devils. And more bad news out of Long Island this morning with, I don't know if there's been a time frame attached to it yet, but it doesn't sound like Matt Barzal is going to be around for a little bit as well. So already can't score goals. Now you lose your best forward and probably the best player on the whole team. So
he's joining Anthony Duclair, who's out long-term with injury as well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So for as much as Bill Armstrong was backed into a corner trying to get a defenseman, he can kind of turn the tables here. Right now he has the upper hand, where you got Colorado really needs some scoring. The Islanders really need some scoring. And, I think just based on the 21 goals and the cheap salary, I think you can maybe ask for a 3rd or 4th round pick. And if you can do that, essentially it's a 3-way trade for Oli Määttä, where you can recoup what was given up, where, I think we overpaid a little bit for Määttä, just given the situation. Maybe, he's probably closer to, 5th round pick value. But if you can get a 3rd or 4th back for Carcone, I think it almost breaks even.
Yeah, it's a good mitigator for the lost asset, which kind of just opens more options for additions as you go along. Another team that stood out to me is a potential Michael Carcone destination. They do have some younger players that are not playing regularly that could provide some offensive touch. Somebody like Phil Tomasino, who's been a healthy scratch for the Nashville Predators, but they're a team that's tied for last in points in the league, which was not what they expected when they brought in Steven Stamkos and some and Brady Shea and some big free agents after their sort of Cinderella run at the end of last season. They were fully expecting to take another step this year, and they've taken a big step backward. And it's largely due to their offense, which I think is tied for the 3rd fewest goals in the league as well. So there's another team that seems to favor veteran players, seems to favor players with a little bit of an edge to him. Carcone is not very big, but he's a bit of a bulldog. And he does strike me as a Nashville type of player, somebody that, their head coach and their GM would probably like and think fits the identity, maybe a little bit more than some of the skilled younger players that are currently sitting out, like Tomasino, and like Dante Fabro, as a matter of fact, who has been unable to really establish himself as a regular in that lineup or as a key contributor, despite some obvious skills and upside that he has. Being a 1st-round pick for them years ago, he's been with the team forever, it seems, and never really taken that next step. He finds himself 7th in ice time on the team, a full minute and a half below Luke Shen, who's slowing down at the end of his career. So I do wonder if maybe there's an opportunity there for us to add a right shot defenseman who can skate a little bit. Dante Fabro, maybe send Michael Carcone the other way. They do have a couple of young players in the AHL that are knocking on the door, at least to some degree, that could fill in for depth on the right side. It's hard to predict a 1-for-1 trade of depth players like that. I think probably a more likely scenario is like one you described for Carcone, where it's just for a pick, because he's probably doesn't hold the type of value required to bring in the type of defenseman we need. We're looking for an upgrade, right? It doesn't really do us any good to bring in another player who can only have the impact on the team this year that somebody like Kolyachonok or Valimaki might have. We need to probably set our aim a little bit higher, which isn't necessarily something that Michael Carcone is going to move the needle on, right, Cory?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think there's also part of this too, where you want to do good by Michael Carcone. He's been a good soldier for the organization going back to Arizona. He was a really good player in Tucson. Like we said, the 21-goal breakout in Arizona, a favorite of Andre Tournier as well. And that might go back to the QMJHL, where they weren't on the same team, but obviously had a lot of opportunities to see him. And as much as Carcone's been sitting out for 6 games, at some point, this is going to get to a breaking point where, there hasn't been any noise publicly yet, but at some point he doesn't want to sit out 7, 8, 9 straight games. And then the other part of that too is you have a number of forwards in the AHL who are going to start pushing for time here. Josh Jones is not going to be down there long. Kyler Yamamoto just got sent down, but he could be back up at some point. Igor Sokolov is 1 or 2 games away from taking over the AHL scoring race and earning an opportunity. And if one of those players gets recalled and gets into the lineup ahead of Carcone, then that could really up the pressure, maybe from Carcone's agent, and really pushing to get this trade done.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. I think even in the NHL, Josh Doan has shown more in the games he's managed to get into than Michael Carcone has. I was more impressed with Doan's play down the stretch last season and early this season than I have been with Carcone's. Doan's in the AHL because he's young and he needs some development time, and also because he's got a two-way contract and he's waivers exempt, right? It makes cold business sense. It makes developmental sense. But in terms of helping Utah win games, I'm not convinced that Doan isn't more likely to do that at this point than Carcone is. Doan already has 2 goals in 2 games played down there. To your point, Yamamoto's down there for similar reasons, just because he was most likely to clear waivers and has a 2-way contract. But he really earned a spot in camp, and he didn't get much of an opportunity. He had a pretty short leash here. He played really well. He had that goal waved off against the Bruins. That, if it counted, once again, it was a small sample size, but I thought he played pretty well to then be demoted. And then Igor Sokolov, friend of the show. If you haven't seen our interview with Igor Sokolov from this summer, please go back and watch it. He is
clean hits bump.
Hilarious. Yeah, he's so funny. What a great guy. And yeah, there you go. Clean hits bump, because yes, he was reassigned to the AHL, which was a little disappointing, but he is eating that league alive. He's got 6 goals and 4 assists for 12 points in 10 points in just 8 games. He's on pace, small sample size, but on pace for 54 goals and 90 points in that league. And this is a big man who has really great goal scoring touch and probably fits into the bottom 6 of a lineup for a little bit of an offensive spark, a little bit better than the 5'9" diminutive Michael Carcone. So we've got this winger depth. We've got guys knocking on the door. And then, one added element to this is we've got Mikko Matica down there, who's being pushed down the depth chart by all of these kind of unexpected additions. He's not getting the ice time and the opportunity, and he's got like 1 point this season and no goals, right? So I'd love to see him get better minutes, better opportunities, play a little higher in the lineup if possible, and not have a bunch of dudes who are kind of in their mid to late 20s kind of pushing him down the roster a little bit. So I think there's a lot of reasons to clear a logjam on the wing, especially since we have such need on the blue line still. But since we've established Carcone is not going to be the guy to do that, maybe he goes for a mid-round pick and it ends up being a bit of a Carcone for Mata trade, as you suggested. I still think there's room for another trade to add another defenseman, right? You mentioned the New York Islanders. You mentioned the Colorado Avalanche. They have a couple of defensemen on each of those teams that would be interesting, but are way out of the price range of what Michael Carcone could bring back. A guy like Josh Manson for the Avalanche is an example, or Romanov for the Islanders. These are guys with real trade value, much higher than Michael Carcone. But could this team lose Carcone and deal yet another winger, maybe with some draft capital, to get their hands on a player of a little higher caliber that could be a real difference maker on the squad, and still absorb the loss of yet another winger and just keep on rolling? What do you think about the concept of Carcone heading out and maybe somebody like a Schmaltz or a Michelli or somebody like that?
I could see it for sure. And it's funny just thinking back to all the Arizona years when we were just begging for offense and just any kind of talent up front. And now all of a sudden we got so many forwards, we don't even know what to do with them, right? And just one other thing on Carcone, while I think of it too, I think he is definitely a victim of his contract, because he can't go to the minors without clearing waivers, and he would definitely get picked up on waivers, and we're not going to lose him for free. If you're a team at the bottom, you're definitely going to pick up Michael Carcone. If you're a Chicago or San Jose and you can just put him on your first or second line, pump 25 goals out of him and sell him at the deadline for half price, and you can get a 25 goal score for like $100,000, why not? But I think at some point, I don't know if it's going to be in the next month or two or something like that, but I think at some point we're going to see basically a redo of the Michael Sergachev trade, where we just have so many forwards, and we still have needs on this roster where you're going to see a quantity for quality trade. And, maybe it is a Nick Schmaltz or a Matthias Michelli going out the door, because we have guys like Kobo Dwen, TG Ginla, Daniel Boot, who are not too far from making this team in probably a year or two. I think especially Boot and Ginla are going to be part of this team. So that's 2 more forwards coming in, and we don't have spots for them. So somebody's got to go. And, Nick Schmaltz is a attractive piece for sure. I think he has 1 year left after this year, a pretty good number. I think it's 5.85. He's on pace. I mean, again, still very early. He's on pace for a career year. He's looking at a point per game. I'd like to see him get a goal at some point. He's got that 0 goal, 11 assists going right now. But, that could be a fit for a team like the Islanders who just can't seem to score.
Well, there's one issue with that, though. I don't think they're going to appreciate his candy cane tape job on that stick of his. It drives me crazy, and I'm not Lou Lamoriello. Maybe if he would appropriately tape his stick, he might be able to get a goal. I don't know. But that wackadoo tape job on his stick probably isn't going to fly on Long Island with Patrick Waugh and Lou Lamoriello staring nails at him. But he's also going to have to shave the beard, right?
Yes.
So I don't know. Nick Schmaltz might be happy to go to Long Island and live in the big city and be a New York Islander and play for a historic franchise like that. But he is going to have to start shaving. So I don't know.
Evoke the no trade just so you don't have to shave every day, especially Nick Schmaltz, right? So
the saddest one I think was poor Anthony Duclair. He recorded himself shearing himself before showing up for camp for the Islanders, because for new hockey fans, their general manager Lou Lamoriello is a bit of a legend. He's a definite legend in the hockey world, and he's kind of infamous as an old school stickler, and he's got some pretty strange rules about personal grooming, and he definitely likes his players to look like they're altar boys and not like they're living any kind of counter lifestyle or anything, having long beards or long hair or dreadlocks or anything like that. So a little bit of a change for Schmaltz, but I digress. There's a definite need there for the Islanders. They've got, as I mentioned, Alex Romanov, who they just acquired 2 years ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
Two summers ago from Montreal. They gave up a first-round pick for him. He's a good player. He's a pending RFA. The Islanders are always in a bit of a cap crunch. They've got a ton of long-term deals, and I'm not sure how Romanov fits into that picture, given that they have like 5 other defensemen, I think, with no trade clauses and term on their contracts, 4 or 5 anyway, a lot. So he's going to be looking to add some term to get a big raise, maybe get some trade protection himself. And they're going to be a little bit painted into the corner with him. And they're not going to win much anyway if they can't start producing some offense. So that does seem like a bit of a natural fit in terms of getting Romanov to Utah, and maybe somebody like a Schmaltz or a Michelli over there to the Islanders. What do you think about that concept?
If you're bringing in Romanov, does that make a piece like Artem Duda available? Because if you're bringing in a Romanov who's a left shot, you would have beginning next year, you'd have 3 Russian defensemen on the left side. You'd have Sergachev, Romanov, and Dmitry Simachev. So it's not, even going forward long term, there would not be a spot for Artem Duda. So does that make him available? And is he almost the next JJ Moser, where he gets moved out because you need upgrades to the rest of the roster?
Or maybe somebody like Juuso Välimäki, who's struggled to fit in and find his place on this squad this year, who's got a very affordable contract at just $2 million. And could be a attractive piece to a team like the Islanders, who are looking for a little bit of cost certainty. He's not a restricted free agent at the end of the season. He does have 1 more year at $2 million, which is just a little less than Romanov makes this season. So Välimäki could be a piece of interest to them, I think, as well, and is another guy who maybe could use a change of scenery, perhaps, and maybe that gets him back on track and he starts playing like the player we saw last season, or mostly the season before, is when he really had a breakout and showed us what he's capable of. Last season felt like half a step back, and this season, honestly, as early as it is, has felt like a full step back for Juuso Välimäki. But there is untapped potential there. first-round picks who've shown flashes in the NHL and are 6'2", always get multiple chances, and GMs always seem to be interested in them down the road. So that's definitely one exciting possibility. But the one team that Elliot Friedman tied us to is Colorado. They have some interesting veteran pieces there in Colorado. Maybe one that's a little bit of a better fit because he's a right shot defenseman, which is more of the area of need, because we did pick up Oli Määttä, who's a left shot defenseman, to help make up for the fact that we have major injuries on our right side with Sean Dursey and John Marino. Somebody like Josh Manson, who's a grizzled veteran with a lot of experience and is a right shot defenseman, could be appealing too. What do you make of the idea of Manson or Sam Girard, or what do you think about the Friedman speculation about Colorado and Carcone, or Colorado and any winger really?
Yeah, I do think Colorado is just a natural fit, just given their needs, and a big fan of a player like Josh Manson and adding that kind of ruggedness to the back end. And Samuel Girard is kind of interesting because who was it against Arizona? Remember, he I don't know if we hit him or he hit one of our guys, and there was a big ruckus, and that kind of kicked off a bit of a Colorado-Arizona rivalry back in the day.
Yeah, who was it that took a swing at him? Was it
Zach
Carcillo?
Maybe
Cassian, Carcillo, Domi? Who was it?
I think it was
one of those loose cannons.
Cassian or Domi, and yeah. I mean, I would be very happy with either of those players, Girard or
Ronaldo, Zach Ronaldo. That's what it is. Yes.
Wow, forgot about Zach Ronaldo. I mean, forgettable player, but
loose cannon, Zach Ronaldo. Yeah. Honestly, Ronaldo had such a bad reputation that was very well earned. Don't get me wrong. He did not deserve the benefit of the doubt from anybody. And is it ridiculous for him to punch Sam Girard in the face? Yes, that's crazy. Sam Girard does not need to get punched in the face by Zach Ronaldo. But I'll say, in Ronaldo's defense, what the hell did Sam Girard think was going to happen? You can't just run up on a dude squared up and not expect to get... Anyway, I'm not going to rehash that argument from years and years ago, but a good learning experience, I hope, for Sam Girard. Sorry, I interrupted. Go ahead, Cory.
No, obviously big fans of both of those players. I do think, the more realistic fit from Colorado is just a draft pick. It just seems as desperate they are for scoring, it seems unlikely they're going to chip away at their defense to help this when they do have, not a ton of extra picks available, but they do have some. I think they have, I'm just going to do a quick check here. They have Colorado. They don't have a third this year or next, but they got 2 fourths. They got a third next year. They got 2 fifths next year. So, maybe you can just do you take a 1/4. Is that enough for Michael Carcone? They got their own. They have Vancouver's. Do you take 2 fourths? You take a 4th and one of those extra fifths?
Yeah, 4th and a 5th seems about right to me. That seems pretty fair. If you can kind of hold them over a barrel and leverage them a little bit, given their winger situation, and get a pair of 4ths, I think that's great value for him. And then maybe you swing for the fences a little bit more with a team like Nashville or like the Islanders, right? I mean, Nashville, maybe you look at a guy like Alexander Carrier, or I would say Jeremy Lauzon, but I don't know if he's going to be playing after that punch I saw him take yesterday. Did you see that? Oh my gosh.
I've heard about it. I have not seen it, but I've heard about it.
Oh, hey man, don't make sure you watch, with your hand over your face and just peeking through one finger, because it's hard to watch. But yeah, he's a tough customer too, but he got absolutely rocked. So Nashville may not have much of an appetite to move one of those guys. Listen, if we did Carcone for Fabro, I'd be intrigued by that. Maybe Fabro with a change of scenery. He's been with one organization the whole time. Maybe he gets back to some of his early career flashes. I'd be intrigued by that for sure. But that does feel like maybe not enough of a deal to really move the needle for us. But if they were interested in maybe moving a higher profile defenseman, somebody like Carrier, I'm not sure I really want to move Schmaltz Schmaltz or Michelli for him, but maybe it's Carcone plus. You start adding in like draft capital, though I'm not sure they're really interested in draft capital at this point either. They're kind of a hard team to trade with because they're so low in the standings, but they're so far behind where they expected to be. They have a ton of draft picks coming up, but they also have a bunch of really expensive veterans on the team. It's kind of like, what are they and what do they want? It's really hard to kind of just figure out a trade scenario, a trade speculation that makes sense with them. Have you got anything with Nashville that you're kicking around in your head?
Well, just going back to Nick Schmaltz too, that's a really interesting piece too, because we don't really know what his future is. We kind of put the breadcrumbs together that maybe he wasn't loving the idea of having to leave Scottsdale to come to Salt Lake City. So maybe he would like to go to Nashville. I think that could be a good fit.
I'm sure he would like to go to Nashville. He'll be the next Matt Duchene. He'll be Nick Schmaltz, country singer. He does have a reputation as like the number one karaoke guy on the team. So maybe you see like, Nick Schmaltz and his brother start a country band, in Nashville.
So yeah, we don't know if Schmaltz, if there's an urgency I think there's definitely an urgency to move Michael Carcone. I don't think either player has actually requested a trade, would be my sense, but I don't know if there's the same level of urgency to move Nick Schmaltz as there is Carcone. And Nick Schmaltz is playing well, which is, he's an interesting player because when he's on, you don't want to move him, but at the same time in the back of your head, you're thinking, kind of want to sell high because it's coming where he's going to be invisible for 2 weeks. And like you always say, you can tell very early with Nick Schmaltz, even into that last game against Calgary, a couple shifts early, you could tell like, okay, Nick Schmaltz is going to have a really good game today. And he did. And he's been, I know we kind of want to talk about the 3 stars of the month, and I don't think he's been one of our top 3 players, but I think he would be in the honorable mention category where maybe he's been our 4th or 5th best player through October.
Yeah, for sure. So there you have it. It's going to be Michael Carcone to Colorado for a pair of 4ths, and then we're going to turn around and deal Schmaltz to the Islanders for Alex Romanov. There you go. You heard it here first. I'm not sure if either of those scenarios made it into Kenny's trade speculation piece he's got going today. I hope we didn't just completely steal his thunder. Imagine if both of those were in there. He's not going to be happy with us, but keep an eye out for that. One guy who's definitely not in Kenny's trade speculation piece that he's dropping on cleanhitshockey.com is Maverick Lamara. I know we talked a ton about him in the post game, so I don't know how much we're going to talk about him here today, but we saw early on he's played 4 games. He's averaging over 18 and a half minutes per game played. He's got a 53% Corsi 4, so the metrics, the analytics nerds are fawning over him. He's only started 44% in the ozone. He's a +3, so the turnover numbers are really high, but he has that goal as well. The point being, he's looked good, and it's not just confirmation bias because I'm so hopeful because he's such a charming kid and could be such a big hope for the future. The point in rattling off all those facts and figures is that the numbers seem to support the fact that he has been good in this brief stint. My question would be, do you think he can sustain it for the rest of the season? Is our big injury fill-in for Marino and Durzi already among us? Is he there the whole time, and is it Mav Lamb?
I would be cautious if he can sustain it for the rest of the year. So I do think it is a bit of a play it by ear and just game by game and see how he does. But he hasn't really fallen off, and he's gotten better each of the. I think he's been up for 3 games now, right? I want to say, and he's looked good. He's taken between 16 and 20 minutes. It was funny hearing Oli Määttä's comments after the last game because they were paired together for a little bit. Oli Määttä, first, he didn't realize that was Mav Lamb's first goal, and he didn't realize that he's 20 years old either. And he looks 20 years old, but maybe he doesn't play like a 20-year-old. And it could just be
he's got the mustache and he's huge, right?
Yes.
And man, talk about as an aside here, and I know I'm going to make us go long with all my rants, but that Määttä is such a great media personality. He's so good with the media. He's such an engaging personality. He's so well spoken, so thoughtful, and really gives great answers. And the fact that he's paired up with with Maverick Lamora, who's better in the media than Maverick Lamora? He's amazing. It's like you add those two together, and it's like, listen, they may not be the best pairing in the NHL, but they might be the most charming pairing.
Hopefully they don't start a
right?
podcast because we're done.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, they're going to be the new Bussin' with the Boys, or it's two active players or whatever in the league doing a podcast. Yeah, we'd be toast. Luckily for us, the accents might be a little bit too thick for the average listener. Yes. So that might be our saving grace here. Yeah.
But no, I think, Maverick Lamora might be taking the Dylan Guenther path here, where he came up last year during the Jason Zucker suspension. It was only supposed to be short term, but he played too well to be sent down. And again, it's still very early with Maverick Lamora, but if he continues to play like this, and part of the reality is we don't really have any other options where who's going to play if you send him down? We don't want to play Robert Bertuzzo for 20 minutes a night. So,
or even 2 minutes a night.
Or because
no minutes a night is okay. Yeah.
Yeah. He's definitely that veteran presence, but he has size, but he's looked slow, and it's becoming, very obvious why he was available as late as he was in the off season.
He's had a great career. He's a fun guy. He's really great too. The guys love him. It seems like he's funny. I think we all remember his cup run and what he contributed there. Definitely a long and proud career that seems to be drawing towards its end here in kind of an abrupt fashion, it seems. Unless he has had some minor looking injury stuff going on. Maybe he's pretty banged up. Maybe once he get some time to rest and rehab, we see a different version of Robert Bortuzzo than we've seen so far. So maybe there is some room for improvement, but given his age, it's starting to look like those situations we've seen before where a player kind of slowed down abruptly.
Yeah. So if you take Maverick Lamora out of the lineup, send him down to Tucson, who's going to play? Because there's nothing in Tucson. And there's nothing else in the press box available here. So it's kind of, we got to play him. We don't have any other options.
Yeah, fair enough. Unless we bring in Romanov, and then
that works too.
We got to move Valimaki somewhere too to make the room for Romanov. And then we got to bring in a cap dump. I don't know. It's too much on the trade tree. It's too much for me to think about. But one thing is for sure, Maverick Lamora has played great, and he's not alone. There have been a lot of players who played very well in this first month of the season, which is now concluded. October is in the history books. The first month of the Utah Hockey Club is over. And I wanted to talk a little bit about who you think your 3 stars would be for October. Who would you pick?
My number 1 would be Sergachev. 2 is Keller, and 3 had, some debate with it. 3, I would go Dylan Guenther. I know he had a bit of a split month where he came on hot and then sagged a little, but has come on in the latter part of the month. And then, honorable mention, I think you would have Nick Schmaltz, and I think I would have Michael Kesselring as well, who's really stepped up in some of those absences on the blue line. But, certainly Sergachev, number 1 defenseman. Dominant performance in that Calgary game, not only with the goal and the 2 assists, but keeping in that 1 puck. Has gotten better each game, I thought, of the 11 games. He's taken on a crazy amount of ice time. I think he leads the league now in total minutes, and just looking like the number 1 defenseman he thought he could be. He was blocked in Tampa on that left side behind Hedman, but he's taken this opportunity with Utah and really ran with it.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's funny. We won't waste too much time with the 3 stars because I have it exactly the same way. I had Sergachev 1, Keller 2. Little bit harder to decide on 3. I went with Guenther 2, and then figured Kesselring and Schmaltz rounded out my honorable mention. So I'm in the same boat as you are with Sergachev, though. I've seen some chatter online from Tampa fans he's got 9 points in 11 games. He was always going to put up points when you give him power play time, but he's got to play sheltered minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Where are you going to hide for 30 minutes in an NHL game? The dude is playing half of the minutes in the hockey game. It's literally mathematically impossible to be sheltered at 28 minutes of ice. Dude is not sheltered. You have to play necessarily top minutes against top competition if you're going to play literally half the game. There's no other choice. He's been phenomenal. His all-around game has been very good. I feel like I took some flack for having too high of expectations for him. I was maybe a little bit more pumped on the trade than a lot of people were. I know there were some people who were kind of critical of my homerism when I was super pumped to bring him on board. But I will say, even as a person who had maybe unwisely high expectations, he's surpassed even those in my eyes. He's obviously a number one defenseman. I've seen chatter online that he's not. It's a short sample size, so I don't want to put the cart too far ahead of the horse here, but he's on pace for 64 points, which would be a career high over the 64 that he put up in Tampa. As the franchise goes, if you want to think about who some of our number one-ish defensemen have been in the past, OEL is probably the best example. His career high with the franchise was 55 points, not 67. Keith Yandel, who was kind of all offense and had some other issues, his high with the Yotes was 59. And Teppo Numminen, who was phenomenal all around, an underrated player and really a very, very good number one defenseman, his career high was 51. So I don't know what people's metric is for a number one defenseman, but he's playing in just this 10-game stretch as well as any Coyotes defenseman ever has. So in my mind, that says to me that's a number one defenseman until his play regresses in any way or diminishes in any way. I mean, he's going to have to change my mind at this point. It's made up. I reserve the right to change it as his play changes, but I see a number one defenseman here.
Yeah, and I think a thing that a number one defenseman can do is they can take over a game, and he was just dominant in that Calgary game, his best game of the year by far. And at the same time, I like JJ Moser as a player, but that's not something that he can do. And for as much as the early talk was that JJ Moser was having this big breakout season where he had 6 points in 6 games, now he's at 6 points in 10 games. And if you look at the game log, he had 3 points in one game, he had 3 points in another, and that means he had 8 games with no points. So right. I think, there's clearly an upgrade there, and, still a fan of JJ Moser, but I'm taking Sergachev over Moser 10 times out of 10.
Yeah, I'd redo that. I would make that trade with less hesitation than I would have made it to begin with. I think that as well as Geeky and Moser have played, and as much as I like those players, I'm even more encouraged by what I've seen with Sergachev, and I feel better about the trade even than I did the day it happened. But Sergachev's not the only great player. I'd say that there's another candidate that could be first star for October. That's Clayton Keller, who's been really consistently very good. He seems to be wearing the C well. There was a lot of talk ahead of that Calgary game from the leadership group that things were going to be different. And I think that was kind of our first real test of this young leadership core, the first real test of Captain Keller. And I think that group came out and rallied and played phenomenally and really put their money where their mouths were. And I think it's a really positive early sign for the new Keller era of captaincy for the Utah Hockey Club.
Yeah, he's really embraced the captaincy. And, if they had a different result in that Calgary game, then maybe the theme of this podcast is different today. But that Calgary game was probably one of his better games of the year, too. He had the goal. He had another goal that was called off. And, it's just nice to see Keller said the leadership group had a chat. They weren't happy with the San Jose result, obviously. And they lived up to, saying it was going to be a different result in their next game.
Yeah, totally agree. So, yeah, I'm glad we're in agreement on the 3 stars here. It wasn't all sunshine and rainbows, of course. And, maybe in a future episode, we'll talk about the players that we're hoping to see a little bit more from in November, guys like Krause, Valimaki, or even on the good side, maybe somebody like Dono. I just want to see more of, not more from, but more of. I'd love to see him come back. So be on the lookout for that. We'll be chatting about what's to come this month, this difficult schedule, what a test it's going to be. Tune in to future Clean Hits Hockey episodes where we're going to be chatting with the whole crew about that. We're going to continue to bring on very special guests. We'll have some announcements on that soon, but you can always count on us to have friends of the show like Brogan Houston and Cole Bagley, dedicated beat writers to the Utah Hockey Club on the show. So be on the lookout for that hopefully next week as well. Once again, cleanhitshockey.com for all of our written content. If you're not in the Discord, at this point, I feel bad for you. I don't know where you're wasting your time on the internet, but wherever it is, it's not as good as what we've got going on in our Discord. So get your butt in there, join the conversation, and make a lot of great friends, because when you show up in SLC, they're going to stop you on the concourse and they're going to say hello. They're going to pose for a picture with you, and you're going to make a new best friend. All right, Cory, anything else you want to add before we sign off?
Just to reiterate the Discord comment there, definitely join. It's it's busy, it's positive, unlike some other social platforms, and it's growing like crazy. Especially on a game day, if you go in there, it's just nuts. And there's a lot of new fans who are learning about the sport every day, and they're becoming, they're hockey nuts already.
That's it. Yeah, it's sort of like the podcast that never ends in there. It's just a 24-hour day podcast, and truly 24 hours a day. If you're night owl, don't worry. We've got people in Australia, people in England, people in Sweden. So no matter which time zone you are, whether you're an early bird or a night owl, there's always Utah Hockey Chat going on in that Discord. So sign up. It's free. It's easy. Join today. All right. With that, I will sign off. I will hope that we haven't screwed this up too badly and we're not in too big a trouble with Brad when he gets back from all of his other podcasting commitments. We see where he stands with us and where we are on the pecking order. That's fine, Brad. We forgive you. Kenny is feverishly putting the finishing touches on his blog, and hopefully he'll be on the show with us next week again as well. So for Cory, I'm Trent. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you all in the Discord.
See you till later.
We know we running it now. Watch the game change. Watch the game change. Watch the game change.